Well, I'm pretty backlit, so sorry if that's annoying, but I'm comfortable, so I'm not going to change it. So I mentioned offhandedly in, I think, my newbie tag that I don't like Goodreads very much, and I figured I would expand on that a little bit because I started thinking about it more and realized that it's not just a couple of isolated thoughts or feelings. I have like a full 5-paragraph essay about why I don't like Goodreads, and so I figured I would chat about it a little bit because, you know what, I think I have valid complaints. That's what this video is, it's just me complaining. So before I start on this whole rant, just like a piece of background information that might be helpful, I'm not sure if it's actually useful or not, but I figured I might as well throw it out there, is that I study computer science at school, like that's my major. So some of my qualms are going to come from more of a computer science background, and some of the qualms are just going to come from like a person who likes books background. Okay, let's go through the reasons I don't like Goodreads. Reason number 1, the search algorithm. So search algorithms are really hard to write, and they're hard to write well. When you try to search for things on Goodreads, just the wrong things come up, and they're things that should be very easy to code as connections. So, for example, if you search one book in a series, I feel like other books in that series should also come up. If you look up the name of a series, all the books in the series should come up rather than books that sound like that series name. All those kinds of things feel like problems that Goodreads should address and solve, and all those things are really frustrating when you're trying to search for a book and add it to a bookshelf, and it feels like you have to slog through a bunch of random things that are completely unrelated that you've never heard of to find like Harry Potter or something that should be super common. And I feel like I'd be very forgiving of this if Goodreads is just a small platform that, you know, was just some people trying to do good, trying to help fellow readers. But Goodreads is owned by Amazon, and I'm sorry, Amazon has the infrastructure and the funds to funnel into Goodreads to make its search algorithm better, to make it better in general, and they just haven't, and that frustrates me a lot. So reason number 1 is they have a bad search algorithm that they could make better, but are actively choosing not to invest time or energy into. Reason number 2 is not at all computer science-y, it's just on a personal level. Books are beautiful. Maybe this is silly, but I feel like books are so pretty, and it frustrates me that an entire website that's dedicated to being this online shelf for all these books, and they choose to have a color scheme of brown and light brown. Like, who told you that that was a good idea? And not only that, but the user interface in general. It looks like a MySpace page. I don't understand why it's so ugly and so reminiscent of the early 2000s when web design and all those things are so different now. They're so much more modern and they look so much prettier. And I have no idea why Goodreads still looks like the trash that it does. When I look at books, I think of art and I think of ideas and I think of these incredible things. And when I look at the Goodreads website, I think of a manila envelope with loose leaf pages stuck into it inside of a Ziploc bag. Like, that's what I imagine when I look at the Goodreads homepage. It doesn't look like a platform dedicated entirely to books, which are so pretty. And that frustrates me a lot. Like, you have one of the prettiest things and you're gonna do this to it? Really? Really? Fine. So yeah, that's reason number 2, is the user interface, the color scheme, and just the design of it in general is so outdated and looks terrible. Reason number 3. So a big reason that I made a Goodreads account when I was younger is because I was looking for book recommendations. I knew what I liked and I knew what the people around me liked, but I wanted things that would push my boundaries and things that I'd never heard about before, because it sort of felt like I was hearing about The Hunger Games, Divergent, Harry Potter. I feel like hearing about the same series over and over, and I wanted something completely different. The Goodreads recommendation service is one of the worst I've ever seen. You would be better off just printing out a list of every book to ever exist and just throwing darts at that piece of paper and picking books based on what your darts hit. I genuinely have never enjoyed a book that I read based on a Goodreads recommendation. And there was a period of time in my life where I read a lot of them because I was trying to find new books. And I not once found one that I liked from the Goodreads recommendation service. And I cataloged hundreds of books because I was trying to make sure that they could understand my reading styles and my reading taste, and it just wasn't a good recommendation service, and I didn't enjoy it. So if that's gonna be a feature that you say you provide, you should, much like the search algorithm, right? This is a computer science problem that you should think about more, right? Netflix, for example, has a really, really good suggestion algorithm, and I wish that Goodreads would be given some more time and effort and money to improve theirs, because it could be a really cool, useful tool if it was made at all better than it currently is. So reason number 3 is that the recommendation service is one of the worst I've seen, and I know that it's not a problem that's unsolved, and I know it's not a problem that other people are not looking into, which means that it's a choice not to look into it, not because it's an impossible to solve problem. Reason number 4, I think, is the one that probably everybody feels, which is that the Goodreads Choice Awards are just the biggest load of trash on the planet. It's just this huge popularity contest that boosts already famous authors and ignores thousands of ratings and ignores what people actually like. And the fact that you can vote even if you haven't read every single book on the list of options means that there's so much response bias, right? The people who are going to vote are going to be the people who feel really strongly about one specific book and haven't read a single other one. So it claims to be something that it just isn't, and I don't like that. And it feels like part of it is like, oh, this is like what the people voted for, but then they're the ones that choose the 10 books that make it into the voting pool, so it's not really what the people choose, it's what Goodreads chooses and then feeds to the people, and then the people who vote haven't even read every single book. They probably read 1 or 2 at most, like for 99% of the voters. And so it's just this really flawed system, and I don't like that they advertise it as this like cool holy grail of like, oh, this is the best book that was published in this genre this year. I just don't agree with it, and I don't think they should. Reason number 5 is just what the general badness of Goodreads represents to me. The fact that it's owned by Amazon, and Amazon started as a bookseller, and now their only pure book platform or product is given so little attention and time and really cast aside, just like makes it really clear that it's not Amazon's priority, and that Amazon is actively trying to move away from its roots and doesn't care that much about books or selling books or helping people find good books. And it just feels like this really clear sign that I guess since this product isn't going to make them money as easily as Amazon itself is going to make them money, it's not worth their time or their energy. And that just makes me sad. And so it just represents how little Amazon cares. I found that there's no use using it for me. I don't really like to rate books because I'm a pretty easy to please reader, even if I have qualms. And so like a rating system isn't that helpful for me because I very rarely will give a book 1 or 2 stars. And at that point, I'm just saying like, meh, good, great. I feel like people will just take numbers and assume that every 3-star book you felt the same about, every 4-star book you felt the same about, every 5-star book you felt the same about. And I feel like we all feel very different about every book that we read, and I find it really difficult to put a number to it. I also think that maybe I'm just indecisive, and you know what? That's on me, but because of that, a platform like Goodreads isn't that helpful. That being said, I definitely understand the value of tracking books. What I do, which I recognize is pretty jank, I have a spreadsheet where every time somebody recommends a book or I hear about a book that sounds interesting to me, I write down the name and the author, and then I have a 3rd column that I fill in once I've read the book, and I highlight it green. And so I can scroll through my spreadsheet of novels and I can see all the books I haven't read and the books I have read. And when I've checked books out of the library, I highlight them in a different color so I remember that I have them and that I have to read them and return them. And so my spreadsheet works pretty well for me. If I search up the name of a book, I know it's going to show up. I have a 4th column where if a book is part of a series, I write down the series name. So I know that if I search up a series name, I will find all of the books from that series. And just generally, it suits my purchases, and it doesn't have the flaws of Goodreads, and it allows me to still track my books. So that's what I use. I recognize that there's not the social aspect, you can't see what other people are reading, you can't easily write reviews, and I definitely understand all of that, and I definitely understand why people use Goodreads, but I've found that this works better for me, and I just get really frustrated that Goodreads is such a good idea and such a useful tool, and somehow it's the best thing that exists out there for a problem that I feel like I wish more people wanted to think about or solve. Yeah, that's pretty much my rant on Goodreads. I feel decently strongly, clearly. Okay, that's all I have to say. Bye.